that we are at the movies today, and with my accent, there's only one movie I could start with, okay? The movie Belfast. Now, just a little show of hands. How many people have seen this movie, just to give me a wee indication? All right, virtually nobody. So that helps me tremendously. So that's a help. You don't have to have watched the movie in order to understand where I'm going today, but I just wanted to, if all of you had seen it, then that makes my life a little bit easier. The fact that virtually no one's seen it means, yes, I saw that. Yes, I think 3 of us have seen it all together. So 3 out of 900 isn't very many. So we'll see how we get on. So listen, I'm going to take a reading from the Bible first of all, because although this series is called At the Movies, we're not really just talking about movies, although we're leaning into some movies to help us. We're trying to also teach some biblical truth. So we're starting with the Bible, and then we're moving to some of these gorgeous movies. So if you've got a Bible and you want to follow a short reading with me, I'm going to read from Matthew chapter 2. Now, if you're a guest with us, you don't have a Bible, don't worry about it. You can just follow the reading with me. Now, here's the problem. The minute, if you've got a Bible, you turn up Matthew chapter 2, you're thinking, he's going to read something about Christmas here. And what I'm about to read, we would normally read at Christmas time. But I'm not going to do a Christmas movie, all right? So we're going to do something that sort of relates to this amazing passage. So I'm going to read from Matthew chapter 2, verse 13, and just to the end of the chapter. So Jesus has been born. The Magi, or the wise men, have come and inquired about Jesus. They've met with Jesus, and we're picking the story up from that point. So it says this, verse 13 of Matthew chapter 2. When they had gone, that's the Magi, the wise men. When they had gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. Get up, he said, take the child, that's Jesus, and his mother, and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to kill him. So he got up, took the child and his mother during the night, and left for Egypt, where he stayed until the death of Herod. And so was fulfilled what the Lord had said through the prophet, out of Egypt I will call my son. When Herod realized that he had been outwitted by the Magi, he was furious, and he gave orders to kill all the boys in Bethlehem and its vicinity who were 2 years old and under, in accordance with the time he had learned from the Magi. Then what was said through the prophet Jeremiah was fulfilled. A voice is heard in Ramah, weeping and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children and refusing to be comforted because they are no more. After Herod died, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt and said, get up and take the child and his mother and go back to the land of Israel, for those who were trying to take the child's life are dead. So he got up, took the child and his mother, and went to the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was reigning in Judea in place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. Having been warned in a dream, he withdrew to the district of Galilee, and he went and lived in a town called Nazareth. So was fulfilled what was said through the prophet, he will be called a Nazarene. So I want you to hold that reading as we think about our subject today. Now, if my mum had have been a man, I would have been an Australian. Okay? It's a bit of a cryptic start to a sermon, right? And the reason for that was, in the early 70s, there was something called the 10-pound passage. Now, people of a certain age, younger people in the room, are not going to believe what I'm about to say to you, but this is absolutely true. The British government were encouraging British citizens to leave the United Kingdom and go to Australia or Canada. And in order to get there, it would cost them only £10. All right? An amazing idea. It was called the 10-pound passage. And in fact, Australians labeled British people who took up the 10-pound passage in the early 70s and moved to Australia, they labeled Brits as the 10-pound palms as a result of that. Now, my mum wanted to join that scheme. And in fact, in the early 70s, something like 80,000 British citizens, 80,000, took the £10 passage and left either for Australia or for Canada, until the price went up staggeringly 5 years later to £79. And that probably put a few people off. Now, my mum wanted to take the £10 passage and leave. But why? Now, it wasn't really she wanted to live in Australia. The reason my mum wanted to move was because we were in the midst of the Troubles. And there's an image here of a wall that will come up for you. Now, this wall looks very arty and very colorful, but this wall is representative of what happened in my little country in Northern Ireland in general, and in Belfast in particular. Walls like this started to go up all over the community eventually. And these walls divided Protestant communities from Catholic communities because what became known as the Troubles began. And round about 1968 to 1969, conflict broke out between Roman Catholic communities and Protestant communities, and they started to fight together. Now, there's a big story as to why that happened, and we could talk all day on that, but that's not my subject. I'm just talking about the facts that have happened. Now, when the Troubles broke out, I was 3 years old. My sister was 13 and my brother was 8. So my mom and dad had a very, very young family. And where we lived in Belfast, it was a really beautiful area. But when the Troubles started, walls like this started to appear around our community. And when my mom saw the Troubles breaking out, she said to my dad, "Come on, let's go. Let's get out of here. Let's go to Australia." Now, I can understand why she wanted to do that. I look back on my life. Dawn and I are the parents of 3 children ourselves. Our oldest is 29, our middle son is 25, and our youngest is 21. And we raised our children in relative peace in England and in relative safely. And I look back and I do not know how my mum and dad raised us in the midst of the Troubles, because the Troubles were fairly horrific. Let me just give you some stats, just as a little bit of a background. Older people in the room will know this journey. Younger people in the room, this may be news to you. You may even have heard of this before. But this was a conflict which cost this country an enormous amount in life and in blood and in finance. It was an incredible, incredible time. The Troubles lasted from about 1968, 1969 to about 1998 officially, although there's still rumblings of that going on. In that period, 3,720 people were killed in Northern Ireland, just across the river, just across the sea. 3,720 people were killed. Of those, 1,441 were British soldiers. Now, to put that into context for you, in the Falklands War, which people celebrate and remember, 255 soldiers died. In the recent Afghanistan war, 457 British soldiers were killed. So the conflict in Belfast, in Northern Ireland, cost the British Army something almost 1,500 lives. It was a very, very costly and troublesome time. About 319 police officers were killed in that time. 47,541 people were directly injured as a result of the Troubles. There were recorded 36,923 shootings and something like 16,209 bombings. All right, now that didn't happen in some far off country. That happened just across the Irish Sea in Northern Ireland, right on our doorstep. And so we lived in a beautiful area, a beautiful street called Ainsworth Avenue. There's another little picture here coming up. Now, this is an amazing picture. I don't know who the soldier is, but the wee boy in the picture is me. That's me. My nephew found this picture. My nephew used to work for Belfast Telegraph. And where we lived, it was a beautiful area before the Troubles, but when the Troubles started, it was literally a connecting point between a Protestant area and a Catholic area. We lived right on the join, okay? It became affectionately known as a peace line. And that's an oxymoron. There really wasn't very much peace going on at that line, but that's where we lived. And Ainsworth Avenue was like a beautiful road in the middle, and it joined the Protestant Shankill Road to the Catholic Springfield Road and Falls Road. Now, these were hardcore areas. These were strong areas of each religion. And we were sort of living right in the middle of that. And it became the main arterial route for the army. It became a flashpoint for riots and troubles. We used to have bomb scare routines that we would follow. If there was a bomb scare, we knew exactly what to do. We knew where to go. We knew how to handle all of that. This was what I was raised in. And I just got used to playing with the soldiers. The soldiers were great, and they would let us have badges. They would let us play in their Land Rovers. And here's a picture of me looking down the sight of an SLR rifle. Now, these rifles don't even exist anymore. The British Army don't use these rifles anymore, but they were very distinctive. I remember as a boy, I always remembered them because they had a really long snout. Look at the length of the sort of the barrel of that gun. And I never ever forgot the army, the soldiers carrying these guns around. This was my world. This is the world John Andrews, Dr. John, grew up in. In fact, many years later, when we were married and had our own children, I took my children back to where I lived, the street that I lived in, and Belfast, the place I grew up in, and they were quite shocked that this is the world I came from. Because so often when we meet someone today, it's hard to imagine where they came from, what their background was. But this is me. The doctor you see standing in front of you, this is me playing on the streets of Belfast. Now, why do I say all of that? Because if you ever get round to watching the movie Belfast, that's the backdrop. The backdrop is that you see little Buddy, the boy, in it, and he's a sort of a 9-year-old boy in this movie. And in fact, it's the story of Kenneth Branagh. Some of you will know of Kenneth Branagh. Kenneth Branagh was an actor. He recently played Poirot. He's a director and a producer. Most people don't know when they listen to Kenneth Branagh with his very posh accent that Kenneth came from Belfast. And he has a really strong Belfast accent if he puts it on. And the story of Buddy is really the story of Kenneth Branagh's family. That's the sort of backdrop. And Buddy was about 9 years old when the Troubles broke out. And in the opening scenes, we see him playing with his friends, and then suddenly everything changes. It goes from an idyllic, enjoyable, worry-free childhood to suddenly riots and divisions and barricades and soldiers and death and destruction. And that's the sort of backdrop to Belfast. And actually, there's another little image here of our family. When I look at that, I am amazed at the grace of God. George encouraged us to remember what Jesus has done for us. And I look at a picture like that. That's me there, the little blonde-haired kid in the middle. What happened, John? You were so handsome. You were so gorgeous. What happened to you? I've no idea. Just this happened. And that's my sister. That's my brother, my dad, and my mother. Amazingly, 3 of the people in that picture are now in heaven. They're not with us today. And I look back on a picture like that. It feels like another lifetime. And the little boy, the little blonde-haired boy in that picture was living in the midst of stuff he didn't even understand, stuff that he couldn't get his head around, stuff, if I'm honest with you, as a 55-year-old man, I still don't understand and I still can't get my head around. But in the midst of it all, the Lord took care of us and watched over us. And what I love about the movie Belfast, and if you ever go to watch it, what I love about the movie Belfast is this. It's really not about the troubles. So it doesn't dwell on people killing each other. It doesn't dwell on the divisions between the Protestant community or the Catholic community or the conflict, between the various things that are going on, the political ideologies. What it's really about at the heart of it is a question. And the question is this: should we stay or should we go? That's the heart of the movie. And Buddy's family are torn. And Buddy's dad wants to take him, his brother, and his wife and leave Northern Ireland, leave all the trouble, leave the division, leave the hatred, leave all the anxiety, and set up a better life in England. Buddy's dad has a great job in England, and he wants to take his family and move. Buddy's mom does not want to go. And this was the opposite in our family. My dad did not want to go, And my mum did not want to stay. And when I watched this movie, and you're about to see a clip from the movie, when I watched this particular clip, I got tremendously emotional. Because I remember my mum and dad talking about staying or going. I remember my dad saying, no, I'm not leaving here. This is my home. This is where I was raised. This is where I want to stay and die. And my mum going, we can't raise 3 children in this hatred. We can't raise 3 children in a divided and broken culture. We need to go and give them a better chance. And I remember my mum and dad not arguing in a bad sense, because they didn't really argue in that sense, but really wrestling with this idea, should we stay or should we go? And he says, I want my family with me. I want to go. She wants to stay. And that was the dilemma of many, many families during the Troubles. Many families stayed, many families left, and some experienced tremendous pain and agony in the whole of that process. John, what's this got to do with church and God, and where are you going with all of this? Well, I don't know if you noticed the story that we read about Jesus, but Jesus, Mary, Joseph moved 3 times. Did you notice that? In fact, we're first introduced to Jesus moving to Egypt, which means Jesus actually was a refugee. There's a thought for us. You know, when we're thinking about people coming to this country from other nations, and sometimes people are coming to this country because the nation they live in and love and want to stay and want to be a part of is forcing them out because of trouble or difficulty, political persecution, even religious persecution. And many people over our experience and our journey we've met who found themselves here because they couldn't stay where they were. And you know, just a little challenge to each one of us before I move on. You know, when you look at that mass of what we call refugees, people that we sort of put in a big lump and we call them, the refugees. Remember that many of those people are just like Joseph and Mary and Jesus. That many of those people find themselves in a place where they want to stay where they are. That's where they would prefer to stay, but actually life is forcing them to go on the run. And before, can I say this carefully? Please don't be offended. Before you point the finger, or before you accuse, or before you look down your nose at a refugee, remember Jesus was a refugee. It's a thought, isn't it? And Jesus, Joseph, Mary were forced to leave their home. Here's what it says. When they had gone, the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. Get up, he said, take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child and kill him. So, like Buddy's parents, like my parents, now Joseph and Mary have a dilemma. Should we stay or should we go? Now, they're given a little bit of help in that they're nudged by an angel. That probably would have helped my dad. If an angel had turned up and said, Alec, go to Australia, probably my daddy would have gone. But actually, Joseph and Mary are helped by the nudge of the Lord. Go to Egypt, and they do. They go. But then look what happens again. After Herod dies, the angel of the Lord comes back to Joseph in a dream and says, get up, take the child and his mother and go to the land of Israel. For those who are trying to take the child's life are dead. So King Herod, who was a very, very nasty man. Again, Herod is sometimes referred to as Herod the Great. And that is definitely an oxymoron. He was a megalomaniac on one level and a brilliant man on another level. And Herod is a king filled with insecurity and angst. When he dies, the angel says, right, you are safe to return. But when they return back to Israel, and they're probably going to settle in the south of Israel, in Judea, Joseph realizes that Herod's son, Archelaus, has taken the throne. Now, let me just say something about him. He was so nasty, the Romans deposed him. Now, when the Romans, who were particularly known for their ability to extract pain and difficulty into people's world. When the Romans think you're too nasty to reign, then you know you're a really nasty piece of work. And they remove him from the throne, and a man called Pilate is put in his place. We may have bumped into Pilate in different stories. So when Joseph returns to Judea, again, the angel, a dream, nudges him not to stay in the south, but go north. And in fact, he ends up taking his family to a little village way up in the north, a village that wasn't even on the map of its day, a village that was so small, probably less than 300 people lived in it, tucked into the heart of a valley, a little village called Nazareth, a safe space, a quiet place, a place away from the glare of publicity and away from the clutch of Herod. And so in the early life of Jesus, we see a family move from Israel to Egypt as refugees. We see them return to Israel in the hope of starting a new life together. And then under threat again, we see them move again to Nazareth. Jesus has a very, very colorful upbringing. John, what's your point? My point is this, that actually Joseph and Mary are making decisions not just for themselves at that moment. They are making decisions for the future. They are making decisions not just about today, about surviving, but they're making decisions about tomorrow, about positioning their family somewhere so that their family can thrive. This is what's happening in Belfast, in the movie Belfast. We want to give our children a better opportunity, a better future, a better hope. This is what my mom and dad debated about and argued about. Shall we stay or should we go? Should we live in Belfast or should we go to Australia? Because they're thinking about the future. And here's Joseph and Mary not making decisions on their own basis, but making a decision on behalf of someone else for a better future. Someone once said that our actions today are a prophecy of our tomorrow. And when I became a parent, now please forgive me if you're not a parent in the room, but hopefully this will still make sense to you. When I became a parent, one of the things I became very, very aware of was the decisions I'm making now are bigger than me. All right, now even if you're not a parent, that's still an idea that you can lean into. But when I held my oldest daughter, Elena, in my arms for the very, very first time on the 8th of April that year, and I held her to myself, I suddenly became aware that from that very moment on, John Andrews couldn't just think about John Andrews. And John Andrews couldn't even just think about John Andrews and Don Andrews. But now John Andrews had with Don Andrews to make some decisions about the future of this child. This child wouldn't remain a child. This child would become soon an older child and then eventually an adult. And now that child has a child of her own called Abigail. And so it goes on. And so I became very conscious as a man, very conscious as a human, that suddenly my life was bigger than me. And that actually decisions I had to make were not simply about me, but they were about something bigger than me. This is a big God idea. God has a big message in the Bible, and one of the big messages in the Bible is this: though you are loved as an individual, though you are precious as an individual, though you are special as an individual, the life that you have and the life that you are living, incredibly, is not just about you. The life that you have is not just about you. If you as a human reduce your life just down to you, the biblical story, the biblical narrative is teaching us that's too small a view for you. You've got to understand, yes, you're special. Yes, you're unique. Yes, you're loved. Yes, God has a purpose for you and God has a plan for you. But every time God gets involved in somebody's life, it's always to show them not only that they are special, but that their life is bigger than just them. That there's an influence they can have. There is a job that they can fulfill. There's a role that they can invest into that is bigger than them. It's not just about me. And that's a big idea. When the Lord comes to a man called Moses, and Moses would end up influencing not just millions of people in his lifetime, but Moses' voice still influences people thousands of years after he has passed away. God comes to Moses, and here's how God describes himself. He says to Moses, I am the God of your father. I am the God of Abraham. I am the God of Isaac, and I am the God of Jacob. Now, why does God introduce himself like that? Because even though he's about to say something dramatic and amazing to Moses that will affect Moses and is really important for Moses' life, he immediately introduces himself as the God who's bigger than Moses, as the God who has a history with his ancestors, and by implication as a God who has a future with his descendants. Are you with me? He's saying to Moses, I'm about to do something with you right now. I'm about to walk a journey with you as an individual. But you need to understand, Moses, there's a whole history that's come before you that I've been involved in. I'm the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Oh, and by the way, Moses, what I'm about to do with you isn't just about you. It's about generations of people who will come after you. And one of the greatest challenges that the Lord has in our lives is to lift our vision of ourselves beyond ourselves. You and I live in a, can I say this carefully? Please don't be offended. But you and I live in a fairly selfish world, a world where we are encouraged to think only of number one by and large. Now, please forgive me. I know I'm making a huge generalization there, but we're living in a world that's pretty selfish. People behave in a pretty selfish way. We've just emerged out of a lockdown. I remember when we went into lockdown and you couldn't buy a toilet roll for love nor money. Now, the reason we couldn't get toilet rolls was because selfishness. It wasn't because everyone was running to the toilet more. It was because people were selfish. And you put a little squeeze on humans, and humans get really selfish really quickly. Because at the heart of us, we've been trained, we've been raised to think only about ourselves. And actually, one of the great challenges that God has in dealing with us, he's always trying to lift us away from ourselves and show us that there is a bigger purpose, there's a bigger call, there's a bigger influence, that my life is not just about me, my life is not just about my mortgage, my life is not just about my next holiday, it's not just about what I want or what I can achieve, as important as all of those things may be. But he's trying to convince me, John, I'm the God of your father, I'm the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And John, what I'm doing in your life today is not just about you, it's about people who will come after you. And I need you to grow up into a vision of your life that is bigger than you. And if you will accept that challenge, everything can change. The Lord wants to convince us that our lives are bigger than just the individual life we're living. The Lord wants to convince us that actually our influence, your influence, can be greater than just now. And the Lord wants us to remember that our actions today are a prophecy of tomorrow. That how I'm behaving today, what I'm thinking today, what I'm doing today is in fact prophesying about tomorrow. Now, my dad made the decision to stay. Was he right or was he wrong? Well, it depends whether you like me with an Australian accent or a Belfast accent. But actually, when we look back on our lives, it could be argued my dad made the right call. The Lord was very, very good to our family. All of our family came to a place of faith in Jesus. All of our family not only survived the troubles, but we thrived in the troubles. God really took care of us and watched over us and blessed us. And I look back on my life, and though I lived through the troubles, I hope and pray and believe I'm not a troubled child, right? I believe that somehow in the midst of that, God did something amazing. But can I say, even though my dad made the decision to stay, and my mum, can I say, sort of surrendered to that decision. That's why I started with, if my mum had been a man, I'd have been an Australian. Because my mum loved my dad so much that she surrendered to his idea, even though it wasn't what she wanted. And if my mum hadn't have surrendered to that idea, here's what I'm convinced of. I'm not sure we would have had the quality of the life that we had. I'm not sure we would have survived as well. My mum didn't just surrender to the idea of staying, but my mum made a decision to stay well. And this is an important idea. Even though my mum wanted to go to Australia, when my dad said, we're not going, she made a decision to stay, but not to stay resentfully, not to stay angrily, but to stay well. My mom often talked about Australia, but not in a resentful way. She laughed and joked about it. She commented on the idea. Imagine what would have happened to us if we'd have gone to Australia. But never once did I hear regret in her voice about not making the journey. She saw the goodness and the grace of God. But the reason I believe that she experienced the goodness and grace of God was because she embraced her day. She didn't live resentfully. She said, right, if we're going to stay, we're going to stay. If we're going to stay, we're going to own this piece of ground. If we're going to stay, then we're going to raise our children well. If we're going to stay, then we're going to lean into this context. If we're going to stay, we're going to do the best we can do. Sometimes we find ourselves in places we don't want to be. And the challenge sometimes when you're in a place you don't want to be, and for one reason or another you can't get out of, you've no power to change that in some ways. One of the great challenges is still making a decision to live well in a place you don't want to be. Now, can I say, as I reflect on my own life, I'm here today primarily because of the grace of God, because of the goodness of Jesus, because he's been kind to me in the most remarkable way. And that's the primary reason John Andrews is standing before you. But can I also say that one of the key factors why I am here before you today in the way I am before you today is because I had a mother who, though she wanted to leave, made a decision to live well in a place she was asked to stay. And you can make a difference right where you are, even if the where you are is not where you want to be. That's an idea that I think is biblical, and sometimes we see many great men and women of God finding themselves in places, in challenges, in difficulties, in moments where they are stretched. And they, for one reason or another, they can't get out of it, but they make a decision. Okay, while I am here, I will give my best to this moment. I will give my best to this context. I will give my best to this relationship. I will give my best to this job. I will give my best to this Christian community. I will give my best. My daddy worked down the shipyard, and this picture is taken of, these are one of the last pictures I have with my father. So this was taken in August 2013, and my dad passed away, went to heaven in December 2013. So this is one of the last pictures. We were on holiday together over in Northern Ireland, and I took him down to the Titanic experience. My dad worked for years in the shipyard, but he had never been to this fantastic exhibition about the Titanic, which was built in Harland and Wolff, where my dad actually worked for many, many years. And can I just say, the Irish built a good ship. It was a good ship. If you're going to sail a good ship into an iceberg, that's not our fault, all right? So it was a good ship when it left Belfast. We built a good ship. And so my dad, I took that picture with my dad. I don't know if you noticed there, it says the Andrews Gallery. Because the designer of the Titanic was a man called James Andrews. No relative, I don't think, of that. That would be an interesting relative to have. The guy who designed the Titanic, one of the most infamous ships in the world. And this is my dad. I took my dad down. The reason I want to show you that is because my dad worked here. And there's an image here, the final image of the famous cranes of Harland and Wolff. You may have seen pictures of this. If you've ever been to Belfast, you can't miss this. If you ever fly into Belfast City Airport, you will literally fly over these. This is Samson and Goliath. That's what they're called. And there's a funny story of a pastor who brought an English pastor over to Belfast to preach. And he took him down to the shipyard. And he said to the pastor from England, and he pointed to Samson. He said, that crane is the biggest crane in the world. And then he pointed to Goliath and he said, and that crane's even bigger. So there we are. So these are the two biggest cranes at the time in the world. Not now, of course. They're iconic. My dad worked down the shipyard, and really he didn't enjoy working down the shipyard. It wasn't really his bag. He was a gentle, kind man, and he worked in a very brutal environment of the shipyard. Some of you might understand what I mean by that. But my dad went to work every day. Just like my mum, he surrendered to a position. It wasn't ideal, but he served it, and he gave himself to it. When I was about 11 years old, my dad took me down to the shipyard where he worked, and he showed me the molding shop that he was involved in. And he showed me the furnaces that for an extra couple of quid a week, he used to get up and clean. And I remember him holding my hand, standing under the furnaces, and my father said words I will never forget to the day I die. He said, son, I am working down here so you don't have to. Now, I didn't understand that at the time, George. I didn't understand what my dad was saying. But I get it now. He was saying to me that I understand as a follower of Jesus, I'm special, I'm unique, I'm loved. God has a purpose and plan for my life. But he was also saying to me, I've understood that my life is bigger than me. It's not just about me. It's about the decisions I make for others. It's about the decisions I make for the future. It's about thinking about the implications of my decisions, not just on me, Alexander Andrews, but on my children, on my friends, on my relatives, and on my family. We have a God like that. We have a God who didn't just think of himself, but a God who thought of the future. We have a God who didn't just think of his own desires and own ambitions, but a God who was so consumed with you, with your children, with your grandchildren, with your future, with your life, that he sent Jesus to earth. And Jesus took up a position that, technically speaking, he probably didn't want to take up. He drank a cup that he didn't want to drink. He hung on a cross that no one would really want to hang on. And yet he did all of that because he understood there was something bigger than him. And as we think about the movies, as we think about this movie, I think about two parents in the story of Belfast who wrestled with not about decisions about themselves, but really about decisions about their future, their children, where it was all going. I think of Moses, who's introduced by God as the God of the generations, and God saying to him, this is not just about you and a burning bush, Moses, this is about the future. I think about Joseph and Mary, and Joseph making dramatic decisions that must have cost him personally in order to provide for Jesus' future. I think about my mum, who wanted to go to Australia, but stayed, and stayed well. And I think about my wee daddy, who really probably didn't enjoy a single day he worked in the shipyard. But he turned up every day and worked down there so I wouldn't have to. That's the spirit of the kingdom of God. That's the spirit of Jesus himself, who surrendered himself to a greater purpose, who surrendered himself for you and for me so that we could have hope. And I just want to, as I'm closing, I just want to pray. I want to pray even for parents in this room. Parents are having to make decisions about their children, that the Holy Spirit will guide you. Just as the angel guided Joseph, the Holy Spirit will guide parents in this room and help you. But I want to pray for everybody, because there's a sense in which whoever you are in this world, wherever you are in this world, that actually grabbing the idea that my life is bigger than me, that my decisions can live beyond me, that my investments today in terms of my service and my contribution and my gifts can enrich a world bigger than mine. That's an important idea for all of us. From the youngest person in this room to the very oldest person in this room. If you are still alive, you can still be an influencer. If you are still alive, you can still enrich. If you are still alive, you can still invest. If you are still alive, you can make decisions today that can change people's tomorrow. And I want to encourage you just to be open to that where you can. So I'm going to pray in two stages really quickly, and then I'm going to hand over to George. If you're a parent in this room with young children who are still dependent on you. Now, Dawn and I have 3 adult children. So if you want to stand, if you're in that category, please feel free. But I'm thinking about parents with children who are dependent on them. If you're a parent in that category, would you stand just where you are and let me pray for you? I'm not going to embarrass you. I'm not going to call you out the front. I just want you to stand right where you are in this auditorium. Just stand. And there may be people who are standing upstairs as well with us. And I want to pray for you. I want to pray that the angel who helped Joseph will help you. Decisions you're having to make about your children's future, that you won't just make them out of pragmatism or out of certain agenda, but you'll make them because you feel the guidance of the Lord upon you. The Lord will help you to make the right decision. Lord, I pray for the parents standing in this room, maybe people who are online right now. Lord, I ask that you will help each parent that stands before you right now. Lord, decisions we're making about our children, decisions we're making about their education, which school to go to, which friends to have, what career to encourage them into or help them to think about. Lord, a million things that cross our radar as parents. And Lord, I pray for the parents who are standing in this room, representing other parents who are part of this church, representing people who are online listening to this. Holy Spirit, I pray that you will guide them, you will help them, you will give them wisdom. In the same way that you nudged Joseph, you will nudge them. In the same way that you guided Joseph and Mary, you will guide them. In the same way that you speak into the ordinary, the mundane, and the routine, you will speak into their everyday and help them. And Lord, I pray that as parents, they will know the courage, the faith, and the confidence that you are with them, you are helping them, and you are blessing them. And Lord, I pray in Jesus' name that you will watch over every decision they make on behalf of their children, and even within their children, their children's children. Now, if we can, everyone else in the room, if you'd like to stand with me, I'd love to pray for you as I draw my little movie sermon to a close. I hope you hear this carefully and properly, but I hope you hear it clearly. Your life is bigger than you. And if you reduce your life to you, you are reducing your life to a smallness it was never designed for. The God of the Bible, the God who sent Jesus to die on the cross for you, wants to call your life to something bigger. Wants you to understand that though you are special, you are unique, you're loved, you're cherished, there's no one like you in the whole universe. It's not about you, but it's about what you can become, what you are, what you can contribute to something bigger than you. I am here today because my daddy worked down the shipyard and surrendered his today for my tomorrow. I'm here today because my mum, even though she wanted to go to Australia, stayed, didn't leave us, didn't abandon us, didn't desert us in the troubles, but stayed, and stayed well and lived well. And who knows that the decisions you make today can be a prophecy not only for your life tomorrow, but can be an influence and prophecy for other lives. Don't reduce your life to just being about you, but respond to the God of heaven who would say to you, your life is bigger than you, your influence is beyond you, and your actions can be an investment into a bigger and more dynamic future. Lord, I pray for every one of my brothers and sisters, every person in this room, every person online. May that be a revelation to us. Thank you, Lord, you didn't sit in heaven and think only of yourself, but you poured yourself into human flesh, lived in a difficult world, give your best to those around you, submitted yourself to a cross so that billions of people in the future could receive your grace, your mercy, and your loving kindness. And Lord, I pray that that same spirit will live in us, that we will realize, though special and blessed, though called and unique, our lives are bigger than us. May that live in us. May that live through us. And may our lives be a blessing to the world around us. In Jesus' name, amen.